Welcome, everybody. My name is Rick Stefanone, Senior Director of Sales here at Consero Global. In my role each year, I get to meet with hundreds of CFOs and CEOs of lower middle market businesses, who are looking at ways to optimize their finance and accounting function. So I get to hear, kind of what the field, right from the field, what's working, what's not working, what's on their mind. And for those of you not familiar with Consero, we're hosting this. We're the nationwide leader in finance as a service. So we help those small and mid-sized businesses by, optimizing their accounting software stacks, improving processes, and outsourcing some of the foundational accounting, FP&A, cleanup work, et cetera. Our focus is on software companies, professional service companies, healthcare companies, nonprofits, and investment managers. And today I'm joined by Chad Denton, CFO at Findhelp. Chad, I'm going to brag on you just for a second. Chad was the 2023 finalist for the Austin Business Journal's CFO of the Year award. Chad's just a longtime friend at Consero and just a great guy. Chad, you and I met in 22 when you were choosing to, partner with Consero for the second time. Would you mind giving the audience just an introduction to you and Findhelp?
Yeah, for sure. And thanks for the kind words, Rick. I will try to not let you down on the presentation today. But quite simply, I work for Findhelp, and we have a software platform that connects all people in need with the programs and services that serve them with dignity and ease. So quite simply, we connect people to the social programs that are out there, and we sell that platform to anyone that employs social workers. So think about healthcare, be it hospital systems or insurance providers, or government agencies, school districts, large national nonprofits, I said school districts, and then large employers as well. So we have a really nice platform that the beauty of one of the things that we've built is it goes across multiple verticals, and it's the exact same platform. And we've worked with, as Rick said, we've worked with Consero for a couple of years now, and originally started working with them back in 2000. I want to say it was like 9 timeframe was the first time I joined with you guys. So it's been a pleasure to be back, and we're ready to get into this. So thank you, Rick.
Great. Well, we're thrilled to have you join, and I know the audience will, appreciate your thoughts and views. By the way, for any of the audience that has not met Chad, he participated in an event earlier this year that we hosted called "Delivering the Best Impact to Your Investor." And Chad, I mean, you gave some really good advice. I would suggest anybody that wants to, find that recording on our website. It's worth it. So let's talk through the agenda. This is going to be a quick and fun agenda here. Chad and I are going to talk through some of the key data points from our 2024 CFO survey. We're going to speculate on a few predictions for 25 and beyond, and then we'll just summarize with some key takeaways. And if there's time, like Allison said, we'll try to cover some of the audience Q&A. So feel free to enter any questions into the chat. So let me start by introducing the audience to the survey, right? This is an independently commissioned survey, and Consero started doing this a few years back, and we continue to do it because the response is awesome. So this year we partnered with Cascade Insights, who conducted the survey, and they actually interviewed 102 CFOs. These are CFOs of private equity and VC-backed companies based in North America, and primarily in the software, technology, professional services, and healthcare verticals, and anywhere from 10 to 200 million in revenue. So what they did is compile a whole bunch of data about the challenges, opportunities that investor-backed CFOs are facing, and then some actually very specific comparisons with those CFOs that partner with third-party finance and accounting firms like Consero and not. So, Chad, let's talk about the first key finding from the survey. This graph here, they kind of outline the top 4 challenges that CFOs are facing. Can you just give me your initial thoughts on the ranking and the order of the survey?
Yeah, the first time I saw this, I was a little struck by how similar there was across all 4 of these, and there's not a lot of disparity. And what it told me was, a lot of the things, ensuring financial reporting is done timely, reporting accuracy and consistency, having well-defined processes, all those things are pretty equally weighted. But at the same time, they're not things that truly drive value across my organization or wherever I am. And so as I thought about them, this kind of led into a little bit of a key decision we had to make early on of, do you want to outsource or do you want to build this in-house? Because if you think about these four things that you guys have identified were, key findings, there's not a lot of difference in them. And if I, they're not going to add a ton of value to my investors, to my board, or to the company in general. It's reporting on what data has happened, which anybody can do. So, it was one of the things that we did early on to just think about, do we want to bring this in-house, or do we want to think about how do we measure this, and how do we truly staff this in the most appropriate manner?
Yeah, and that's a big decision, right? I mean, because it's
Yeah.
it's it's one that kind of stays for a little while if you go down one way.
Yeah.
Um, so in the survey, they talk about, to your point, you have a decision to make as CFO. Do I
Yep.
build it and start to solve for these four challenges on the left? And what are some of the key ways to overcome those, right? So on the right-hand side, now you'll see some of the things that we feel outsourced accounting providers take off of the plate of,
Mhm.
a CFO. Any examples? Can you pick a couple of these that you can relate to and how Consero helps?
Yeah, for sure. And yeah, I touched a little bit on it earlier that I've either got to build it in-house or I can use third-party software. And we'll talk more about this in a little bit too, as far as the technology and the benefits of doing that. But when I outsource this, suddenly I can I can set my dates, right? I can say, hey, look, I need to have reporting done by this date. I need it to be accurate and consistent. And I need to be able to, you guys have to come to the meeting prepared. And suddenly if you guys are handling that aspect of it, my team, which can be much smaller, it doesn't have to be near as large, they can be truly focused on the high level strategic, visionary things that we're trying to drive. And they can show up at that report, at that meeting with your team, ready to ask questions and ready to evaluate the data, as opposed to, hey, they've been running, ragged the last 10 days, 12 days, trying to get close on time. They've got it done, but they have no idea what's behind the numbers. And if I can bring my team to look at it from a third party perspective, and you guys have the understanding of what's behind the numbers, those meetings are incredibly effective for us. We just had one this morning, and we're able to get through a month end close meeting in about 45 minutes, 30 to 45 minutes. And
Wow.
it's invaluable to us.
Um, and can you compare that to in-house? Like any, comparison on what it looks like from your experience?
Yeah, yeah. We're fortunate because that's part of that decision between in-house and outsourcing is a little bit of your business model. If you have a simple business model, your revenue, the way you measure, the way you invoice, it's repeatable. It's something that can be pushed out to somebody. Those are all things that do go into it. Some companies, I was at a company before that we had a pretty complex billing procedure, and we used technology to do some of the things that we wanted to do to automate that, but we weren't a good um, candidate for outsource. Just to be completely honest, there were aspects of our business we could outsource, but to take the whole accounting aspect, we couldn't do it. But if you have the right structure, like we have, where it's pretty simple, it makes a lot of sense. And I don't want to get too far ahead of us here,
Yeah.
but some of the struggles that you deal with when you have it in house and you're building that team in house is I have all the head hiring and headcount issues associated with building that team. I've got the integration of technology. I've got automation I'm trying to involve. I have to manage all of that. Whereas, if I can get a good partner like a Consero, I'm not trying to be a salesman for you here, but if I can get the right partner, all
Yeah.
those things suddenly work in my favor.
Yeah. And I think to your point, I mean, because we are going to get to the technology and the people,
Yeah.
because that was brought up in the survey. Let's move on to the second key finding, which to me is there's a couple things here, but they talk about AI implementation and the impact, specifically, I think, to the finance and accounting function. And
Yeah.
the survey says that most CFOs are planning on implementing something, right? And I meet with them all the time, and I'm a bit of an AI geek, right? I've been an early adopter. I've been
Yeah.
figuring out ways to use it and leverage it on a daily basis for some time now. But when you work with an outsourced provider that brings systems in tech. Is this
Mhm.
something that you have to spend much time thinking about, or do you put that onus on, the provider like Consero?
Yeah, that's exactly right. And I read an interesting article this morning. It said it was talking about AI and kind of where CFOs are and what they think about from a next steps perspective. And 58% of the population of this survey said they understand very little about AI, and 38% said I have enough to do my job, which kind of tells me that okay, they're just doing the bare minimum. And
Yep.
then 2% said I have a strong knowledge. So there's incredible opportunity in this area. I think, for us, to your point, Rick, I think the day-to-day kind of low-hanging fruit that's there with AI, the mundane, repeatable tasks, I think those are very ripe. And the beauty of an outsourced engagement with you or whoever it may be, is, that's on you guys to figure that out. And that allows me to then say, hey, I want my close to go from 10 days to 7 days, or 7 days to five, or even, maybe even 5 to 3, depending on the size of the business and what I'm trying to achieve. But, you guys or that outside team can then be driven to do that. And again, my team can, rather than focus on that aspect of it, they can still be focusing on what we get out of that AI tech, out of that from a strategic perspective. And then also start thinking about that next frontier of AI and how do you use it to, get the analysis that you want to get, because you now have data coming to you. What are ways that I can look at large swaths of data and analyze it quickly and do that, as opposed to somebody trying to go, line by line and look in the details. You'll always have that human element that needs to be there, but if I can pull that back a little bit and just find ways that truly that fits in, that's where I think from our side, we'll start to see it.
Yeah. And just, I think we talked about this in the past, but Consero as a service provider, we're very deep into AI and thinking about it, right? We're thinking about automation. How do we streamline some of those repetitive tasks that don't add a
Sure.
ton of value but have to get done? How do we augment some of our team to help enhance everybody's productivity? And then how do we accelerate, right? How can we get you that financial reporting package quicker? How do we help with analytics and predictive modeling? And I don't know if you saw, but just last month, our CTO was interviewed by the Austin Business Journal, and they were talking about, some of the things, exciting stuff we have with integrating AI.
Yeah.
So it's exciting, but I can also say that being an AI geek myself, trying to understand the landscape of products that just seem to be relentless, coming in every week, there's a new one. It's going to be a daunting task, I think, for anybody that has to do it on their own and build it out and try to figure out what's the right product that can integrate into our tech stack, which ones are applicable for my industry, what's going to
Yeah.
provide the best ROI. I just feel like there's going to be a lot of time spent in a lot of kicking the can maybe on that one.
Yeah, I agree with you totally.
So great. Well, let's move on to the next finding, M&A. I guess before we jump into like a little bit more of the survey, can you just walk us through some of your experience with M&A? Any
Yeah.
learning opportunities, successes, things like that?
Yeah, I'm going to tell everybody what they already know. It's hard. Like M&A is difficult. And
Yeah.
I've made a ton of mistakes over the years where, you do some M&A is fun. It's exciting. It's cool when you're doing like a big splash M&A and you're really bringing in, kind of some transformative, companies together. But it's very difficult after that deal is closed. It's kind of like bringing a family together. Like, the top level, the partners are pretty happy, but the kids and the cousins and the families and everybody underneath, when they have to come together, you have different cultures, different personalities, different goals and objectives, and sometimes they match and sometimes they don't. And I think what we've found more recently, where we've been, and what I like to do from an M&A perspective is I like to think about, how do I find, kind of what I call an aqua-hire? I didn't coin the phrase, but people, the aqua-hires where you maybe bringing in, you find a company that's got 6 to 8, talented engineers, and they've built a really nice product, but they're not sales folks. They don't necessarily know how to take that to market, and they don't have the customer base that we may have. And so when we found those type of transactions, and those are super successful for us because it fills out our product suite. that we're trying to build. It allows us to bring on some real quality employees that can then quickly, they know their product, they can quickly mold the two together. And then we don't have a lot of the, when you're bringing all the technology together of accounting systems and, you know, Salesforce or Orange, whatever it may be, your CRM tools, that gets really challenging. And so that's that's the area we try to kind of play in and try to avoid those big headache issues, if you will.
Yeah. So, obviously a lot of publications talking about 25 being a strong year.
Mhm.
And even the early market, response after the election suggests people are pretty optimistic. We're going to be in a more favorable and deregulated environment. Do you share that outlook? Do you see some growth opportunities for Find Help on the horizon related to M&A?
Yeah, I do for sure. I also think, from a investor perspective, be it PE or VC backed, whatever you are,
Yeah.
I think there's a lot more things are starting to ease up a little bit, and they're being getting a lot more calls from people. You see a lot more activity, a lot more interest. It just feels like there's a little bit of I don't know if I would say the lid's been taken off completely, but maybe it's been cracked a little bit on the side there's always room for good companies and quality companies, but I think you'll see that continue to expand a little bit.
Yeah.
And
Um,
just real quickly, I'd say we're excited internally because of what we can do. We think there's some really good opportunities to do some of these acquihires I talked about it. I think for other companies, there's going to be a lot of that's available for people.
yeah. If we focus for a second on specifically M&A, but on the tech stack that
Mhm.
you know, with a partner, right, and we manage the technology and integrations, what type
Yep.
of sense of relief is that when there's something like an acquisition potentially looming? Um, can you just give me your
Yeah.
sense of like, does it make it just a breath of fresh air? Like it's not something you have to spend time thinking about?
Yeah. Yeah. And well, personally, like you mentioned, you're a little bit of an AI geek. I am not a tech geek by any stretch of the imagination. So, my eyes glaze over about 3 minutes, 5 minutes into a conversation of the feature functionality of technology and products that we have. But at the same time, knowing that you do have a partner, as we've gone through M&A with an outsourced partner, or even if the company we're acquiring uses an outsourced partner, I like that because I know the level of detail I'm going to get from them. I know the level of detail my folks are going to send to them if I'm on the other side, and it just makes it so much easier because my team that's can be pretty small and strategic, they can be very laser focused on pieces and not necessarily having to do every bit of the due diligence and every bit of this other piece. They have a partner that they can work with, and depending on where that partner is located, it can typically work really nice because I can ask for something the night before. They can work on it overnight. I wake up and it's there,
Yeah.
and it makes for a really smooth process.
Yeah, I agree. And that goes into maybe let's, a nice segue into people and
Yeah.
turnover, right? This is no secret. Anybody that's been in any industry sees the staffing shortages in just about everything. But this statistic here in the 24 survey was interesting comparing to the 22, where senior leaders are talking about, accounting talent
Yep.
shortage. And I mean, it's bumped up now to 83%. So, with high turnover, staffing challenges, what's your experience been with using a partner and mitigating some of that?
It's beautiful because it's no longer my problem. It's you know, quite candidly, I've also found it's much easier for me to recruit and retain key finance, type background people as opposed to accounting. Because you're right, there is so much opportunity for them. Not that there's plenty of opportunity for quality finance people as well, but I've got a much better opportunity to drive that growth and to set a view of, hey, here's where your role can go from a finance perspective with somebody, as opposed to an accounts payable clerk or somebody that does my invoicing. That there's only so much that role can ever grow to. And so they're always going to be kind of looking for who's going to pay me the most, and maybe the environment that I create for them as well to make them stay. But it's it, I'd rather focus on the key talent that I want to keep and make sure you guys, my partner, they're able to manage that aspect of it. And that's probably one of the things I love most about outsourcing accounting.
Yeah. And so you've been there for what, about 3 years, right?
Mhm.
And I think I heard on the last webinar that the business has pretty much doubled in revenue, right?
Yep. Yep.
Can you just tell the audience what changes to your internal accounting team have you needed with that growth and
Yeah.
using an outside partner?
Yeah, it's a great question. We've added one person in that time period on the internal side. We've been able to grow with Consero, with your partner. Behind the scenes, you guys have added some folks and done some other things to help us in that regard. But internally, we've added one person, and candidly, we've improved the level of technology and the level of reporting. I'd say level of technology, the level of reporting and analysis that we provide, not only to our board, but to our investors and to our company internally. And that, again, that's a direct result of, my folks get to work on the strategic aspect of it. And, it's, it's, that is time is irreplaceable. And that if I can keep that as high as I can, it makes for so much more of a dynamic environment for people.
Right. So let's hit the last key finding. Again, everybody on the call should have a copy of the 24 CFO survey. Just reach out if you don't, we'll send it. But this last one is just the talking about the ability to focus on strategy and ROI, right?
Mhm.
And time. I think I don't even know. We haven't prepared this, but you're doing perfect segues. Let's talk about that. The time itself, because I talk with a lot of CFOs that have to kind of operate a few levels down from time to time, whether somebody transitioned out or workload got higher and they're operating more in a controller level task. But are there any examples you can share how working with a partner helped you stay focused on strategic priorities?
Yeah, for sure. And I'll talk a little bit about that first bullet, the technology investments, in that regard, and kind of weave it into how we
Yeah,
work with you guys. But where I've made mistakes in the past was when I was buying technology that I thought would solve a problem, but I hadn't clearly defined what the problem I was solving was. And, that was what we did when we decided to outsource where I am today to Consero, is we understood what our problem is, from a, day-to-day accounting, what's the problem we're trying to solve? And then we looked at technology and we thought, look, we could bring all this in-house. We could do all this the way we want to do it. Does it solve the problem and allude to what you were saying, Rick, of how do I maximize the time that we have to spend on the strategic aspects of where we are? And so we chose to outsource it. But I say all that to say those are the mistakes I've always made. Whenever I've tried to buy technology to solve the problem that I clearly didn't understand, and or I tried to customize it to fit my processes more so than just use their out of the box pieces. That's probably one of the best lessons I've ever learned over time. It's not something I know I'm not here to tell my lessons, but if I can buy software and I can use it out of the box and I have to change my processes to do that, I'm going to do that every day because that process change is a one-time thing. If I have to have them do a design customization to fit my processes, every time their base technology changes, that customization has to change with it. And I'm constantly playing catch up all the
and catch
time.
up. Yeah.
And that's not a place I want to be. And to your point, you end up spending a ton of time on things that add no value to anything other than, okay, does this integrate here? Well, no one really cares. They just want the product.
Yeah. And I spent a long time in ERP, mid-market ERP prior to Consero, and I would see the same exact thing. With just long projects, the ROI just diminishes every week that the project went, delayed and costs went up and all of that. So you feel comfortable with a partner that says, "Hey, we have that part taken care of. Like, just grow, focus on your business. The tech side is going to work."
Yeah, that is, I've done integration work where you buy a brand new accounting system, you go through the whole process, you integrate it, you build it, you match it up to your old processes, and I mean it's hard. When we switched to Consero, I guess it was 2 or 3 years ago, that yeah, there was some work we had to do to map some stuff, but it was seamless for our side because y'all had the technology, you knew how it worked, you knew what the reporting was going to be. we told you what we wanted and we helped and we got there. And, you know, we were able to do that in, you know, I want to say it was like
60
30 to
days,
60 days. Was
30,
it
yeah,
60 days, Rick?
30
Yeah.
or
I mean,
60,
it
yeah.
was, I've never been anywhere that I completely did a complete integration of an accounting system in 60 days. And we were up and running and reporting. And it was as if we'd been on that the whole time. So that was a beautiful aspect of that
Yeah.
role.
And speaking of time, you notice the statistic on the bottom there that finance leaders, there's just increased pressure
Mhm.
and responsibilities, right? Wearing lots more hats than just finance and accounting. Can you help give any examples of, some of the activities you can spend time on when you're not, focused on the close, for example, at the beginning of the month? Is there any, I guess, tips or advice for other CFOs that,
Yeah. I think, you know, finance and accounting is that matter to some degree, but your finance team, they're in a unique spot because they know so much about the business and they know like corporate objectives, they know the plan, they know how teams are operating, where their pain points are. And it's very easy for your finance team to, and even the CFO to say, hey, I can help. I can do that. Let me take that. But what happens is you end up taking so much and you end up suddenly you have responsibility for your dev teams efficiencies and metrics, and as opposed to giving them targets and making sure they're, how are you managing this, how are you driving this, how are you actually running to it, you can help them. But it's something I'm still not really good at, you know. But it's that ability to bring somebody along with you, to take ownership of it, to make sure it's done, but at the same time they own the process. And you know, when I've done that effectively, it it's it's incredible what it does from a time perspective, because suddenly I get to review and assess as opposed to and incur and come up with suggestions and, you know, make some, hey, let's try this, as opposed to helping them build it up so much that by the time I get there, I don't really, you know, I'm just tired of doing it at that point in time. I'm ready to move on. And
yeah.
so I think that's probably the one of the harder lessons I've had to learn personally.
Hmm. That's good. And the last question I think I'll have, and then we'll move into kind of the predictions, but can you talk about accuracy? I know some people could be hesitant with outsourcing because,
Yeah.
they're afraid, hey, a service isn't going to provide the same level of detail that an in-house employee was, and, nervous about accurate financials. What's been your, you know, experience?
Yeah, I'd say we've never had to restate a quarter or a month from a financial perspective. You know, when we do our month end close, like today we had that, there may be some numbers that I push on a little bit because, hey, this may look a little weird or and unique, but you know, they always have the answer and we're always able to evaluate and decide. It's never necessarily somebody made a mistake. It's usually, hey, we thought this is where this was booked.
Yeah,
And it's, but it's not a, you know, we're not in a situation like Macy's where a guy, you know, caused a multi-million. It's our error. We're far from that. So
yeah.
I've had no issues from an accuracy perspective.
Awesome. Well, I encourage everybody to look through that survey for some of those key findings. Let's transition over to we've come up with a few predictions for 25 and going forward. Some of this is kind of related, some isn't, but one of the key things CFOs are saying that the increasing use of tech to help reduce costs is important. But Deloitte puts another survey out and they say, well, measuring the value or ROI of these investments is still a huge challenge. Um,
Mhm.
any any thoughts, and not just saying on the finance and accounting side, but company wide, are there specific ways CFOs could help the company guide it, like as they're looking at making big investments into AI or other tech?
Yeah. One of our internal initiatives that, you know, we've had for the last year or so is, you know, profitability, and how do we actually get to profitability? How do we show that we have scale and efficiency? And it's not always, you know, a lot of times people's first answer is, well, I'm going to buy technology. I'm going to go out and buy something that will help solve the problem. But, you know, where we started challenging folks on is making sure teams talk to one another. And our implementation team talk to the dev team and engineering team on, hey, here are the problems I have installing the product. Here are the things that would be really nice if it could do this. And our engineering team, it's almost like the light bulb went off as to, well, wait a minute, I can make it do that. That, I just need a little bit of time. Maybe give me a week or two and or maybe a month, maybe we can put a team. And then we start doing some analysis too of, well, wait, okay, maybe it takes 2 months or 3 months to build what we want to build internally. But if I can get a contractor to come in and maybe build it or augment my engineering team while they're doing these other pieces, it's still far cheaper than going and buy brand new technology or hiring more people or whatever it may be. I'm going to get those benefits. So that's the thing where we've probably, and I'm excited about 25 is we have some of those identified of enhancements that we're going to be able to make to our existing tools so that people understand how they're being used and how they're being supported and what makes that better. So now, even as we think about engineering, as they're designing our product team, they're designing new build, they have that mindset of how am I going to build this so that it is a little better, easier to implement and easier to use internally because it does save costs. And a lot of times, your engineering team doesn't necessarily realize that they can impact efficiency and cost internally more than they know.
Mm, yeah. Let's flip over to the second bullet is just the focus on, FP&A reporting.
Mhm.
And, they're saying there's some reports saying that the time spent on due diligence is increasing as much as 50% this past year. So we have the markets, everybody's expecting the transactions to pick up. What do you think the investors are going to be prioritizing during the diligence process this year? And what would what should executives be doing to prepare to meet some of those expectations?
Yeah, I think you're exactly right. I mean, it's we're a far cry from 2021 when deals would close really quickly with limited due diligence and they were just looking at kind of top line stuff and making sure things seemed reasonable. I think we're back into the days of people understanding the business and diving into what's there and does it make sense. And that's again one of the beauties of using a partner is I know that that data is there and I know they have the products and I know they have it in a nice organized fashion and I can get to the data quickly, as opposed to, my folks, if I have it all in house, yeah, we probably have it right, but it's also a bit of a battle. I'm shifting resources around to make sure I can get that done. But,
Yeah.
for us, I think even the next question a little bit, or maybe this one is a little bit more on the, what are we looking for? Um, historically, what I've always thought about when I think about a company and how we value and what's important is if I can prove the model works, and I can prove that through top line growth, that if that's accelerating over time, which is kind of what we're experiencing at Findhelp as well. And then I can show there is there's a large market opportunity here. I think that's where people always they dig into TAM and they dig into your SOM and some other stuff, but I think you see a little more into that now as to, hey, is that reasonable? What's truly is because you may have this huge TAM, but what do you think your truly serviceable, obtainable market is of that? And if it's let's say 10 to 15% of that number, is that reasonable from an investment perspective? And then if I can then show how do we efficiently grow the business? And, we use Rule of 40. I know a lot of people do that, but we can show, look, we're growing the business top line efficiently. We're making the right investments. And then we look at sales metrics. We look at, be it magic number, just simply our net new MRR or ARR divided by the cost of the sales and marketing. What did it take to actually generate that? And if I can show that my sales and marketing dollars, for every dollar I'm spending there, I'm generating more, be it, 1.2, 1.5, even 2 or 3, whatever that may be, there's value there because then you immediately can show every dollar investor you're going to put in the business, you're going to get a return. And then we can start to grow the top line. And as multiples, those they kind of do what they do, but as they go
Yeah.
up, you've
Can
generated a
add
lot
up.
of value.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I said a lot there, so I apologize.
No, it's all good. I'm sure the audience is taking notes. So I think we just kind of answered this, this question here on the screen, some of the deal making and what, how to increase, maximize your shareholder value.
Mhm.
Um, what about, you have any thoughts on the war for talent? I mean, this is persistently been a hot topic for years, and it's more than 50% of PE managers are saying executive retention risk at the portco level is just continues to increase. So,
Yep.
you know, yeah, give me your some thoughts there, and maybe how the relationship between, the C-level executives and their sponsors are evolving, et cetera.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, it's a challenge. It really is. That's one of the hardest things in the world to do is to find good people and keep good people. And you know, people want to work for people they enjoy being around. That's part of it, right? I mean, you got to be able to create that good relationship. And that's part of this challenge with remote work is it's hard to build a culture when you are remote. Now, we've found a good balance for us that works, but it's a challenge. To people need to be around some folks, and it's how do we bridge that gap with that a little bit of younger employee group that really wants to be remote all the time now, and how do you actually show them the benefits of coming in? But at the same time, I this may be a lot more than what you're asking for, but when I'm hiring people, I look for one thing. I'm not so worried about do they have the background or the talent. Yeah, they obviously do by the time they've got to me in the interview process, and I can teach them how to do you know, what I need them to do. What I can't ever teach somebody is passion and caring about what they do. And if when I can find that in people, I've hired bank tellers before. I've hired okay. Some of the best employees I've ever had were people that were not with the background that traditional finance accounting, background to be an FP&A person,
Yeah,
but they cared about what they did. And that person, when you can find those people, they stick around, they want to be a part of what you're doing. And, I would much rather hire that over somebody that has the blue ribbon resume, if you will.
smart. Yeah. Well, this has been good. I mean, if we think about some of the key takeaways, to me, it feels like it always comes down to people, process, and systems, right? It's just
Mhm.
it kind of all revolves around there. And accurate and timely financial reporting, I don't think that will ever not be a big
Yeah, yeah.
concern, right? Um, but if you just step back and look at the folks that leverage partners who don't, it seems like there's just a little bit less time that they need to spend figuring out technology and the stacks they're going to use and day-to-day hires and all of that. Um, any final thoughts on these takeaways before we maybe get some Q&A?
No, I think you're dead on. I think you're never going to get away from things needing to be timely and accurate and consistent and reporting. You have to. If you don't do those things, you lose confidence of the board, the investors. Those things can cripple regardless of how good your presentation or whatever you do in a heartbeat. So, but there's no reason you have to use your best talent to do those things, and there's no reason you can't outsource that to, you know, grow with the systems, grow with the technology, grow with where the market's going, and utilize that technology, and keep your team lean so that they can truly focus on that strategy and they can build those reports, and that that data is going to come. And I just, I yeah, don't want to be. I know you guys didn't do this to be a salesman for you, but at the same time, I could not. I wouldn't change the way we do it in any way, shape, or form. Is it always going to be with Consero? I don't know. Just to be honest, but
Yeah,
I like Consero. I like the partner, and I like the structure a lot.
thank you. Well, um, Allison, do you want to open up with any questions? I know we got a few minutes left. Anything that we can answer?
Yeah, thanks, Rick. So the first question that came in, the survey covered a lot of benefits of working with an F&A partner. How does the cost compare of outsourcing versus building an in-house team and tech stack?
Uh,
Okay, yeah.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say happy to answer that one just since I do hundreds of these a year and we always provide a comparison. I think the idea is, over the years, I think 4 years ago, I think the typical cost was like there should be a 20 to 40% savings. I will say with the increased salaries and increased cost of tech and other things, I think a lot of times it comes in between 30 and 50% savings over building it out in-house in an optimized fashion, right? So if you have good systems that are integrated, you have the right level of people doing the right activities, an outsourcing partner should be able to save between 20 and 50%.
Yeah, Rick, we found that to be true on our side as well. So
Thank you. Yeah, and this one, Chad, I'll pose to you. What skills or qualities do you think would be most valuable for CFOs in 2025 and beyond?
yeah, I think that's a great question. And I think one skill that I work on all the time, and I'm not great at it yet either, is alignment. Like you have to be able to, how can you connect your financial plan to the mission, the vision, and the strategy that the company is going to use to fulfill that mission? And how do you get all the teams tied together? How do they understand what those key initiatives are, how they tie into what our mission and vision and strategy are and our corporate goals, and do it in a way that they understand. Even your person that's level one support that's answering phone calls, he knows or she knows this is why this is important what I do, and because it drives this piece. And it's something we work on all the time. It's a very much an iterative process for us over the last 2 to 3 years. This year's plan is probably better than it's ever been from that perspective. And how do we drive that alignment and get people involved across the board there? Because, and I say all that to say, anybody can report what happened, right? Anybody can report on, here's what happened last month. They can prepare a nice little presentation, but not everybody can, develop that skill to help drive what's going to happen. There's things that happen you can't control, political, geopolitical, whatever it may be. But if I can get everybody rowing in the same direction in the company, our chance of success goes up. It multiplies overnight. I mean, it's amazing what we can achieve.
Thank you. And then Rick, I'll pose this one to you. What emerging technologies do you believe will have the most significant impact on finance teams?
Emerging technologies, I think it's going to be a combination of, some of the providers, the bigger providers out there that are consolidating things like, Bill, who's acquired some, spend expense management and integrating it with AP and trying to bring a lot of things together. But, at the end of the day, I think AI is going to really have probably one of the biggest impacts. I know internally, we have 1,600 people, full-time employees providing services, right? We're definitely looking at it saying, how can we remove some of the manual activities, still get the same level or better of accuracy, and then repurpose those folks to elevate into the next role, right? More review, more analysis, and more value for, people like Chad and his team.
Thank you. And then last question, Chad, what strategies do you use to build stronger relationships with your investors? If you have any you'd like to share.
Yeah, I do. It's very similar to the way I hire people too, is you have to build a relationship, and people, they want to invest and they want to do business with people that they like to some degree. Now, at heart, if your business sells itself, it sells itself, and there's people that can be jerks and get away with it. But I found it much more effective that if I can create the right relationship with my board as well as with the investors, and we all share a common purpose, they at the end of the day, I am a salesman. Yeah, I'm a CFO, but I am selling the business to investors, to our board, I'm selling where we're going and what we're trying to do. And if I can do that effectively, then we all win as a company, and every employee does. And so I take that, I think it's very important for CFOs to realize that you are selling the business and you represent every employee that's on that team to your investors and to your board. And I found that to be very effective.
Great. Thank you.